Hello, please meet today's guest, Anne Claessen.
Because from podcasting, you can serve people and also get cash flow from it. Because I think what you do, Jothy, is a perfect example of this. Because you have your podcast with stories from people who are in the startup space and they share their experience. But then you also have your book. So then if people are listening to your free content, your podcast, they might want to learn more from you and they buy your book, which is a perfect next step into learning more from you. And then after they purchase the book, they might want to learn even more and they purchase your course. So it's, even if it's not about money and it's about serving people, like you said, it's just a way to serve people, I think.
Welcome to Designing Successful Startups, the podcast where founders share their hard-earned wisdom so you don't have to make the same mistakes. I'm your host, Jothy Rosenberg. Today's episode features Anne Claessen, the CEO of Cashflow Podcasting, a company that's been helping entrepreneurs launch and grow their podcasts for over 12 years. Anne's journey from podcast coach to CEO offers fascinating insights for any startup founder. Originally from the Netherlands, but now based in Madrid, Anne shares how she merged teams after an acquisition, built a successful service-based business model, and reveals the marketing challenges even established companies face. We'll also explore the critical importance of consistency in content creation and why patience might be your most valuable asset when building an audience. Whether you're considering podcasting as a marketing channel or simply looking for guidance on navigating company growth, Anne's practical experience and refreshing honesty about what keeps her up at night will provide valuable perspective. Let's dive in. Well, hello, Anne, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I always like to start off with a context setting question, which is very easy. Where are you originally from and where do you live right now?
Yeah, I'm originally from the Netherlands. And at the moment, I live in Madrid, Spain. So still in Europe, but a little bit warmer.
Like how warm is it today, for example?
So I never know. I never know Fahrenheit. So I'll tell you in degrees Celsius. But I think it's like 22 degrees Celsius. We're recording this the end of May, so like spring, slowly going into summer. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's, I would say,
still pretty
perfect
warm.
temperatures. Yeah.
You have a startup now. It's related to podcasts. Its name is
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Cashflow Podcasting. I actually
Cashflow.
don't own it. So important to know, it's not technically my startup, but I run it. So in that sense, it's kind of mine to grow it for sure.
The CEO is it. You don't have to have ownership. You are in
Mhm.
charge of it. You're trying to make it go, make it grow, all of that. So that's the legitimate thing. You didn't found it. You were brought in at some point. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So Cashflow Podcasting was founded about 12 years ago, which for a company in the podcasting space is really early on. Actually, it was founded by Ben Kruger, and he has run the company for about 10 years. And then he hired me at some point as a podcast coach. So I started working for Cashflow Podcasting part time, helping their clients launch and grow their podcasts. And then over time, I did other things. I took on more responsibility, worked my way up into a marketing director. And then when I was marketing director, the company got acquired by the current owners, Pete Mikaitis and Ryan Carney. After they acquired the company, shortly after, they asked me if I wanted to step in as CEO and merge the teams, because at this point there were two teams doing different things for different clients. So I merged the teams, made sure we have now one team, one process, one pool of clients, all those fun things. So I made that change, and that's about a year ago when I started.
Have you had any things that have not gone the way you wanted? Have you had problems? Have you had any significant challenges?
I mean, always, right? Always. Where would be the fun in business without these things? Um, I would say our challenge has definitely been, I would say what went really well in this process and like of the acquisition was making the teams work together. That has actually been not as much of a challenge as I expected it to be, and also the team. Like it was surprisingly easy, which is really interesting. But then what has been a challenge this past year is that our new marketing efforts are taking more time to generate results as what we expected, to be honest. We were really thinking that we would say see results faster from new projects. So yeah, that has been the main challenge we've been working on this year, to make sure that we have a really good lead pipeline with new clients, especially with the larger team now. We can handle more, we can do more. So yeah, we also want to make sure that we have the clients to actually do it for.
Is your business model that you sign up a client and you charge them some fixed fee, or do you get a percent of the revenues that they start to bring in thanks to your efforts?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So it's a fixed fee. We charge a fixed fee for a podcast launch, which includes everything our clients need to actually launch a podcast, including, the strategic conversations that need to be had, all the little details. Our team creates every single piece of the podcast that you need. And then there's also a fixed fee for ongoing podcast production, and also includes coaching. But we don't take a percentage. So that's really interesting for our clients, because they usually have high ticket services, or sometimes products, but very often services that they offer to their clients. In that case, it's even if they would have one new client from the podcast in a year, the podcast would have been profitable. So it's really scalable. It's a really scalable marketing effort for our clients.
I'm just wondering if you had a model where you took, negotiated a percentage of what revenues they brought in, you might be able to bring in smaller clients who they may be low on cash. They may have trouble coming up with the project fees. It's just an interesting alternative, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, there are more, I think, in podcasting, but probably in all things business, you have to invest either time or money, right? You can either do everything yourself, is investing a lot of time, a little money. You can hire someone for a specific thing, like you might work with a podcast editor, but then you manage the project yourself, you write all the copy yourself, stuff like that. That's often where podcasters start when they have a smaller budget, and then once they see things work, very often podcasters then get stuck to a level where it's like it's working, but they would like to get it to the next level. And then they come to us. So then they already have a podcast launched. It's already up and running. They're X amount of episodes in, maybe a year in, something like that. And then they come to us to go to that next level. And then we either do a whole relaunch for them, or sometimes it's just small tweaks, and that's it. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting model. I don't know if it would work for us, just because of the way operationally how everything works, but I think it is good to know that, if you are listening to this and you feel like, okay, a podcast sounds really interesting, but I actually don't have the budget for this right now, there are definitely other ways to do it.
I do really love to hear about a little more detail about, the challenges. So is there anything in particular that has kept you up at night?
I would say seeing results from new projects. Results are important, of course, and I have had some sleepless nights thinking, was this the right decision to put a lot of resources into this thing? Like, are we going to see results at all? I would say that's probably the thing that has kept me up at night at times.
So I'm one of those newish. I mean, I started podcasting in March of last year, and I've recorded 72 episodes. I guess I just do one a week, and I do it myself. But I find one of the things I find interesting about this business in general is that there's people who are looking around, looking at your podcast, and then sending you a message saying, "Here's what you're doing wrong." I get those all the time.
That is an
I got
interesting
one.
way
I
to
got
put it.
one that was a beautifully crafted email with an image of my one of my YouTube covers, and then somebody else's YouTube cover, and he says with red bullets, here are all the things that are wrong with this. And in green bullets, here's all the things that are right with this other person's. I could help you fix it. And
I don't know.
it's sort of a trolling approach to working in the podcast business, I suspect. But speaking of which, since you've been working with a lot longer than you've been the CEO, you've been working with podcasters at all stages of their evolution. And what would you say are the most common things that people are doing wrong who are podcasting? And I'm sure you're going to list some things that I'm going to say, ooh, that's me.
Yeah, I mean, of course, right? So yes, I've worked with quite a few clients, and like at all stages, like you said. I think one of the most important things that some new podcasters get wrong is not allowing enough time to see the true potential of a podcast, especially when you have a pretty new business, like, for example, a startup, right? And I was actually just mentioning, for us, it has been a challenge to see results quickly enough from our new project. But the same goes with a podcast. Like, as a business owner, as a startup founder, you want results quickly because you want to know if it works. But to have a really good understanding and have enough data from your podcast to actually know if it works, you need ideally a year of weekly episodes. If you do that, then you know truly this works, this doesn't work, which is really difficult because you would need consistency. You would need to invest that amount of either time or money or a mix of both into this one project. So it's difficult, but if you think that podcasting can work really well for your startup, give it a year, make sure you have the budget in time and or money to do it for a year, and then draw your conclusions. And within that year, you obviously want to tweak things and change things up as you go. But a lot of podcasters stop too early. They start a podcast, they do a few episodes. Consistency is extremely, extremely difficult. With podcasting, social media, all of these things that are best if you do it consistently. And I think that's one of the things that you do so well, Jothy. Like, you have an episode every single week. And that's extremely important because it builds trust with your audience. And especially in, a space where a lot of podcasters don't do this, it already sets you apart as a professional podcaster when you are consistent. So I think super important, but super, super difficult. I would say main mistake is the mindset around podcasting, in that sense that it can be a quick fix in some ways, and you will very likely see some results from the podcast early on, just from having a podcast, launching a podcast, being seen as an expert by being a podcast host. Yes. But the full extent of it, you can really only know after about a year of consistently releasing content.
For me, I know that a lot of the ones that you're seeing are something that a company wants to do to get the word out about their product or services or whatnot. For me, it's a little different. I'm trying to give back to the startup founders of the next generation, let's say, after me. Experience is one of those things that sort of sneaks up on you. You've done something for, in my case, 37 years, 9 startups, and you have a lot of experience. For me, the thing that's probably the most valuable in that set of experiences are the mistakes. And people really learn well from hearing about your mistakes, as long as you're honest. Why was it a mistake? How did it happen? What did you do about it? All that kind of stuff. And for me, the book was leg number 1. This book came out last August, and the publisher put, they always do, put a limit of 250 pages. That's the most you can have. Don't even go over that. Forget it. I had a lot to say, so that was hard. But for me, the point was those were my opinions and my experiences, and the podcast is everyone else's, their experiences, and they're from different markets, different countries, everything is different. But in fact, some things aren't, because everybody who's doing a startup has to make payroll, has to watch their cash, has to do this. And so there are some common things. And the third leg of the stool is launching 2 weeks from yesterday, is an online course. People might learn well from that model, some from the book, some from listening to podcasts on the way to work. And so that's what I've been doing. But I don't feel like I'm not trying to make money on it. There's no monetization at all. I would like it to have a higher listenership, though, because I think it's got something useful in it to a lot of startup founders, and there are a lot. And so I am anxious to figure out how to get it to more people, but it's not about Cashflow Podcasting. It's about another goal, which is just serving more people, helping more people is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right, and especially about what went wrong. You could get it from all the usual booksellers. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show.
Yeah. No, I absolutely hear you. But I actually think I might disagree with you a little bit, Jothy, because
Okay.
let me explain.
Good.
I think cash flow is important in podcasting because no one wants to, unless you're the exception, but usually no one wants to put endless amounts of money into a podcast, right? And having some cash flow from the podcast allows you to get in front of new people. For example, paid traffic is only possible if there is money to actually put behind those ads. And there's other things, there's a lot of marketing efforts that just cost money. Maybe it's by hiring someone to help you with marketing. That costs money. So even if the podcast is not about making money, but it's about visibility and getting your message across to more people, I think cash flow is still really important because it allows you to do that in ways you cannot do it without that. So in that way, I think it is actually really important. And I think that's really exciting as well, right? Because from podcasting, you can serve people and also get cash flow from it. Because I think what you do, Jothy, is a perfect example of this. Because you have your podcast with stories from people who are in the startup space and they share their experience. But then you also have your book. So then if people are listening to your free content, your podcast, they might want to learn more from you and they buy your book, which is a perfect next step into learning more from you. And then after they purchase the book, they might want to learn even more and they purchase your course. So even if it's not about money and it's about serving people, like you said, it's just a way to serve people, I think. So I think it's really interesting, like from the podcast, to have these steps. Because if you, quote unquote, only have a podcast, there's only so much you can do to serve people, right? And with a course, it's a different way. A book is a different way to serve people. And I think if it all works together, like in your case, I think that's really exciting. That's how it all comes together, right?
Wow, spoken like a true CEO. That was that was convincing.
Was it visionary?
Yeah, probably. So one of the things that I like to always get into is that I've never met anyone who's working, whether they're a founder or a CEO who's not a founder, as in your case, they all have grit. It is just a truism. I would love to know where your grit comes from.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure if I know the answer, to be completely honest. I've always really liked work, which is really weird for a lot of people. But when I was a child,
that's true for the Dutch. I think that's part of your DNA from being from the Netherlands.
Maybe. But like truly from when I was a child, I couldn't wait to work and to have a job. It just seemed really exciting to me.
Like at what age? What age did you start thinking like that?
When I was 14, I got my first part-time job after school delivering newspapers. And even before, like I would have started the year before if I could, or even 2 years before. Like literally going into high school, I was like, okay, like can I work? Can I make money? I don't know. Like I just really it was really exciting to me. And I always worked throughout, like literally from that moment that I had that newspaper job when I was 14 years old, I always worked. So I did the newspaper thing for a while. I worked at a butcher for a year, like I don't know. I just always kept going, and I always tried, which didn't always work, but I always tried to have fun at work. So an example, when I was, I think I was 17 years old, I worked at a pharmacy, or it's more like in the Netherlands, you have like a drugstore pharmacy. It's like between a drugstore and a pharmacy. And I started working there. I mean, all fun. But then I actually had a really good manager at this job who saw that I wanted to do more. And she gave me like a little bit more responsibility and like, oh, can you handle this project for me? I was like, yeah, sure. So I just ran with it until the point that I was 17 years old and I was managing the shop on Saturdays when the manager was out. And I was not officially the assistant manager or anything, but I was like supervising a small team as a 17-year-old, which was it's just wild when I think about it now. But I don't know, I just took the opportunities that I could get. I never lost that really. And I think that's why I went to law school and got all my degrees and did, some internships at law firms. And especially at bigger law firms, I had a horrible time. And I think that was because it was very structured and there were, I mean, law firms, it's just hierarchies on hierarchies. I think that's where the grit comes from. It's just, I just want to do my thing.
Was the motivation when you were the young child or teenager, do you think it was initially you wanted the money, you wanted what the money would then allow you to get or do? Was that the original, you think the original motivation, money?
I think it was both. I think it was both the money and also just the work itself. I was also just really curious, like how, like, what is this work thing about? And I don't know. I just wanted, I thought it was exciting, but also the money. Because it was not even that I wanted to spend it, but I wanted the freedom that money would give me to spend it on things or not spend it. And I always saved a lot. Um, from the moment I started my first job, I always saved the majority of my income at that point. It was not a lot. Yeah, I think it was mostly about freedom and the excitement of gaining skills, if that makes sense.
And at what point did you leave the Netherlands? I don't mean vacations, but I mean, when did you decide to change where you lived?
Yeah, for good.
Was that after law school?
It was, yes. I went to law school and also business school, so I have a ton of degrees that actually no one has ever asked me about since I have them. So that's a fun fact. Yeah, so went to law school, did my MBA after that, and when I finished that, I realized that I actually did not want to be a lawyer because the original plan, I wanted to be an M&A lawyer, so mergers and acquisitions, very corporate at a big firm in the Netherlands. And I had that job lined up literally to start after I got my degrees. And then at some point, a few months before I would finish up my degree, I was like, I don't actually want to do this. Like, I couldn't imagine going into the office every day and doing the lawyer things. So I decided not to do it. I called him up and I was like, listen, I'm very sorry, but I actually changed my mind. I don't want this job. Thank you so much, but it's not for me. I had no plan B at that point because I was always thinking this will be me, right? When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. And then I didn't. So I applied for some jobs at that point, some more consulting jobs in the Netherlands, and I was not like they were like, why are you applying to this? So that didn't work out. And I maybe applied to like 5 jobs, nothing major. And then at that point, I still I was not excited about these jobs. I didn't really have another plan. I wanted to travel. Original plan was to find a job, travel for a few months, get back, start the job. And then when I actually said no thank you on the job, couldn't find a new job that I actually really liked, I was like, okay, let's do the traveling first, and then I'll come back and I'll find a job, because then I might know more about what I actually want. So I started traveling. This was in 2018, so 7 years ago. And I never really returned, except for visits. So I traveled around Southeast Asia. I lived in Australia. And then I continued living in different places for a few months at a time. So I did the whole digital nomad thing where I would live for a few months in a place and then move on and then, might come back, might not. Worked online, yeah, for those full 7 years until about a year and a half ago, maybe, and for some part of this, I had an apartment in Germany where I would be 6 months out of the year, and then the other 6 months I would be traveling. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided I wanted to move to Spain. So I moved to Spain, to Valencia at first, and now Madrid. And
Did you already speak Spanish?
no, I'm still learning. Yeah, which is a fun project. It's really challenging and sometimes actually fun, but also challenging. I'm trying to enjoy the process of learning the language as well. Some people, they really have a talent for learning languages, and I notice that that's not me, necessarily. But
But you
I'm
grew up with both Dutch and English, so you already spoke two.
Yes, but I don't remember ever learning English because of that. It's more like a bilingual thing where you just have always been able to do it. So actually, and I mean, I learned languages in school, but it's definitely different because here I actually have to use it.
Is your boyfriend Spanish?
He is, yes, yeah. So sometimes we
But
practice, and he helps me try to understand things, and yeah, and I'm taking classes, right? But
so around the
it's
house, do you
just,
speak English?
yeah. At home we speak English.
Well, it's been fun. I think we're at a good stopping point.
Sounds good.
Thank you very
Amazing.
much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was super fun.
Yeah, for me too. Now, here's your toolkit takeaway. Tool 1, the 1-year rule. Give your marketing initiatives, especially content-based ones like podcasting, a full year of consistent execution before judging their effectiveness. Quick fixes rarely exist in audience building, but the compound effect of showing up reliably creates both trust and sustainable growth. Tool number 2, cash flow enables impact. Even if your primary goal isn't profit, establishing healthy cash flow allows you to amplify your mission. Consider creating a value ladder like Anne described, free content that leads to books or courses to fund the expansion of your reach and impact. Tool number 3, structured freedom drives grit. Notice how Anne's grit came from seeking both freedom and structure. As founders, we need to create environments where team members can take ownership of projects while having clear boundaries. This balance nurtures the entrepreneurial spirit that drives long-term success. And that's our episode with Anne Claessen. Until next time, keep designing your success. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying, TTFN, ta-ta for now.